Hi there, before we get into the video I want to apologise for the scuff setup. The lighting isn't very good. I'm also going to be reading off my laptop, which means I won't be making the most eye contact, but I hope I can get my main ideas across. In this video I'll be reading my favourite passages from two books, The Psychology of Money and Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'll be adding some of my own comments too. I'm also trying to get this all in one take, so let's go. The Psychology of Money. Now, this book was a great primer into how to make a sensible approach into investing and saving over a long period of time, and the mindset that one should adopt to find that success. I now feel more confident in my own financial plan moving forward after reading this book. 1. No one's crazy. People from different generations, raised by different parents who earn different incomes and held different values in different parts of the world, born into different economies, experiencing different job markets with different incentives and different degrees of luck, learn very different lessons. Everyone has their own unique experience with how the world works. Your personal experience with money makes up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but it makes up maybe 80% of what you think how the world works. The share of Americans over age 25 with a bachelor's degree has gone from less than 1 in 20 in 1940 to 1 in 4 in 2015. 2. Luck and risk. Risk and luck are doppelgangers. Be careful who you admire and praise, and be careful who you look down upon and wish to avoid becoming. Focus less on specific individuals and case studies and more on broad patterns. 3. Never enough. Their host, a hedge fund manager, had made more money in a single day than Heller did from his widely popular novel Catch-22 over its whole history. Heller responds, yes, but I have something that he'll never have. Enough. There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalposts stop moving. Modern capitalism is a pro at two things, generating wealth and generating envy. The only way to win is to not fight to begin with, to accept that you might have enough. Enough is realizing that the opposite, an insatiable appetite for more, will push you to the point of regret. 4. Confounding Compounding. His skill is investing, but his secret is time. That's how compounding works. That's in reference to Warren Buffett, who's been investing for over 3/4 of a century. 5. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. 40% of companies successful enough to become publicly traded lost effectively all of their value over time. Getting money requires taking risks, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. But keeping money requires the opposite of taking risk. It requires humility and fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just as fast. Warren Buffett didn't panic and sell during the 14 recessions he lived through. Warren Buffett didn't attach himself to one strategy, one worldview, or one passing trend. Planning is important, but the most important part of every plan is to plan on the plan not going according to plan. You plan, God laughs. It'd be great if the market returns 8% a year over the next 30 years, but if it only does 4% a year, I'll still be okay. It's good to plan not to reach a specific goal, but at least within a range of it. Sensible optimism is a belief that the odds are in your favor, and over time things will balance out to a good outcome, even if what happens in between is filled with misery. Roughly 99.9% of all companies that were ever created went out of business. The stock market fell more than 10% from a recent high at least 102 times. The stock lost a third of its value at least 12 times. And annual inflation exceeded 7% in 20 separate years. 6. Tails, you win. It's more about how much money you make when you're right and how much you lose when you're wrong. 7. Freedom. Having a strong sense of controlling one's life is a more dependable predictor of positive feelings of well-being than any objective conditions of life we have considered. This is what old people prioritized. Once they reached the end of their life, they prioritized quality friendships, being part of something bigger than themselves, and spending quality unstructured time with their children. Take it from those who have lived through everything. Controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. 8. Man in a car paradox. The irony is that I rarely, if ever, looked at them, the drivers. When you see someone driving a nice car, you rarely think, wow, the guy driving that car is cool. Instead you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. Subconscious or not, this is how people think. If respect and admiration are your goal, be careful how you seek it. Humility, kindness, and empathy will bring you much more respect than horsepower ever will. 9. Wealth is what you don't see. Someone driving a $100,000 car may be wealthy, but the only data point you have about their wealth is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought that car, or maybe they're $100,000 more in debt. That's all you know about them. When people say they want to be a millionaire, what they actually mean is, I'd like to spend $1 million. And that is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. Wealth is an option not yet taken to buy something later. Its value lies in offering you options, flexibility, and growth to one day purchase more than you could right now. Wealth is what you don't spend. 10. Save money. Building wealth has little to do with your income or investment returns and lots to do with your savings rate. Learning to be happy with less money creates a gap between what you have and what you need, or what you want. Past a certain level of income, what you need sits just below your ego. One of the most powerful ways to increase your savings isn't to raise your income, it's to raise your humility. Savings can be created by spending less. You can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. Many previous technical skills have been automated. Competitive advantages tilt towards nuance and soft skills like communication, empathy, and perhaps most of all, flexibility. 11. Reasonable is better than rational. Minimize future regret. 12. Surprise. History helps us calibrate our expectations, study where people tend to go wrong, and offers a rough guide of what tends to work, but it is not in any way a map of the future. This is not a failure of analysis, it's a failure of imagination. Realizing the future might not look anything like the past is a special kind of skill. History can be a misleading guide to the future of the economy and the stock market because it doesn't account for structural changes that are relevant to today's world. 13. Room for error. The purpose of the margin of safety is to render the forecast unnecessary. The idea is that you have to take risks to get ahead, but no risk that can wipe you out is ever worth taking. 14. You'll change. An underpinning of psychology is that people are poor forecasters of their future selves. Only 27% of college grads have a job related to their major, according to the Federal Reserve. 29% of stay-at-home parents have a college degree. A new parent in their 30s may think about their life goals in a way that their 18-year-old self making career goals would never imagine. It is one thing to say we don't know what the future holds. It's another to admit that you yourself don't know today what you will even want in the future. The first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. Compounding works best when you give a plan years or decades to grow. This is true not only for savings but careers and relationships. Endurance is key. And when you consider our tendency to change who we are over time, balance at every point in your life becomes a strategy to avoid future regret and encourage endurance. 15. Nothing's free. Every job looks easy when you're not the only one doing it because the challenges faced by someone in the arena are often invisible to those in the crowd. 16. You and me. Thinking of market volatility as a fee rather than a fine is an important part of developing the kind of mindset that lets you stick around long enough for investing gains to work in your favor. Few investors have the discipline to say, I'm actually fine if I lose 20% of my money. This is doubly true for new investors who have never experienced a 20% decline. Investors often innocently take cues from other investors who are playing a different game than they are. When a commentator on CNBC says you should buy this stock, keep in mind that they do not know who you are. 17. The seduction of pessimism. Optimism is a belief that the odds of a good outcome are in your favor over time, even when there will be setbacks along the way. Pessimism just sounds smarter and more plausible than optimism. John Stuart Mill wrote in the 1840s, I have observed that not the man who hopes when others despair, but the man who despairs when others hope is admired by a large class of persons as a sage. Organisms that treat threats as more urgent than opportunities have a better chance of surviving and reproducing. Only 2.5% of Americans own stock on the eve of the Great Crash of 1929 that sparked the Great Depression. Only 2.5%. Extremely good and extremely bad circumstances rarely stay that way for long because supply and demand adapt in hard to predict ways. Progress happens too slowly to notice, but setbacks happen too quickly to ignore. Growth is driven by compounding, which always takes time. Destruction is driven by single points of failure, which can happen in seconds, and loss of confidence, which can happen in an instance. A 40% decline that takes place in 6 months will draw congressional investigations, but a 140% gain that takes place over 6 years can go virtually unnoticed. One of my favorite chapters was chapter 18, When You'll Believe Anything. In 2007, we told a story about the stability of housing prices, the prudence of bankers, and the ability of financial markets to accurately price risk. In 2009, we stopped believing that story. Stories are by far the most powerful force in the economy. Chronicling the Great Plague of London, Daniel Defoe wrote in 1722, the people were more addicted to prophecies and astrological conjurations, dreams, and old wives' tales than ever they were before or since. Everyone has an incomplete view of the world, but we form a complete narrative to fill in the gaps. Hindsight, the ability to explain the past, gives us an illusion that the world is understandable. It gives us the illusion that the world makes sense even when it doesn't make sense. Risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything. We need to believe in a predictable, controllable world, so we turn to authoritative-sounding people who promise to satisfy that need. The illusion of control is more persuasive than the reality of uncertainty. My other favourite chapter was chapter 19, All Together Now. Respect the power of luck and risk, and you'll have a better chance of focusing on things you can actually control. You'll also have a better chance of finding the right role models. Wealth is created by suppressing what you could buy today in order to have more stuff or more options in the future. Does this help me sleep at night? Is the best universal guidepost for all financial decisions. Time is the most powerful force in investing. It makes little things grow big and big mistakes fade away. Use money to gain control over your time. Saving for things that are impossible to predict or define is one of the best reasons to save. Nothing worthwhile is free, and remember that most financial costs don't have a visible price tag. Room for error often looks like a conservative hedge, but if it keeps you in the game, it can pay for itself many times over. Define the game you're playing and make sure your actions are not being influenced by people playing a different game. Smart, informed, and reasonable people can disagree in finance because people have vastly different goals and desires. 20. Confessions. Independence to me doesn't mean that you'll stop working. It means that you'll do the work you like with people you like at the times that you want for as long as you want. If there is a part of our household financial plan I'm proud of, is that we've got the goalpost of livestock desires to stop moving at a young age. Beating the market should be hard. The odds of success should be low. If they weren't, everyone would do it, and if everyone did it, there would be no opportunity, so no one should be surprised that the majority of those trying to beat the market failed to do so. My investing strategy doesn't rely on picking the right sector or timing the right recession. It relies on a high savings rate, patience, and optimism that the global economy will create value over the next several decades. The more the internet exposes people to new points of view, the angrier people get that different views exist. Moving on to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This book opened my mind to techniques that rich people use to stay and become more wealthy. Whilst most of the examples are probably only applicable in the US economy, they still help to build a mindset for making money. The most important takeback I have from this book is to inform myself of the laws that rich people use to make their money and how a corporation allows for money to be used pre-tax as opposed to normal jobs which are taxed before workers can spend. By automatically saying the words, I can't afford it, your brain stops working. By asking the question, how can I afford it, your brain is put to work. Broke is temporary, poor is eternal. Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. A job is really just a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? If your pattern is to spend everything you get, most likely an increase in cash will just result in an increase in spending. Wealth is a person's ability to survive for so many numbers of days forward. Or in other words, if I stopped working today, how long could I survive? The rich buy assets, the poor only have expenses, and the middle class buy liabilities that they think are assets. What is missing from most people's education is not how to make money, but how to manage money. Lesson 3. Mind your own business. The rich focus on their asset column, while everyone else focuses on their income statements. Financial struggle is often the result of people working all their lives for someone else. 9 out of 10 companies fail in 5 years. Of those that survive the first 5 years, 9 out of 10 of those eventually fail as well. One of my favorite chapters was Chapter 4, Lesson 4, The History of Taxes and the Power of Corporations. The rich created a corporation as a vehicle to limit their risk to assets of each voyage. The rich put their money into a corporation to finance the voyage. No matter what the take from the rich crowd come up with, the rich always find a way to outsmart them. That is how taxes were eventually levied onto the middle class. The rich outsmarted the intellectuals solely because they understood the power of money, a subject not taught in schools. As this cycle of growing government spending continued, the demand for money increased and the tax the rich idea was adjusted to the lower income levels, down to the very people who voted it in, the poor and the middle class. A corporation is merely a file folder with some legal documents in it, sitting in some attorney's office and registered with a state government agency. It's not a big building or a factory or group of people. A corporation is merely a legal document that creates a legal body without a soul. The problem is that the people who lose are the uninformed, the ones who get up every day and diligently go to work and pay taxes. If they only understood the way the rich play the game, then they could play it too. They would be on their way to their own financial independence. Every time people try to punish the rich don't simply comply, they react. They have the money, power, and intent to change things. They don't just sit and voluntarily pay more taxes, instead they search for ways to minimize their tax burden. They hire smart attorneys and accountants and persuade politicians to change laws or create legal loopholes. They use their resources to effect change. Financial IQ is made up of knowledge from 4 broad areas of expertise: accounting, investing, understanding markets, and the law. The law is split into 2, tax advantages and protection from lawsuits. For tax advantages, by owning your own corporation, your vacations can be board meetings in Hawaii, Car payments, insurance, repairs, and health club memberships are just company expenses. Most restaurants' meals and partial expenses and on is all done legally with pre-tax dollars. And the protection from lawsuits. If you own any kind of legitimate asset, I would consider finding out more about the benefits and protection offered by a corporation as soon as possible. So business owners with corporations first earn, and then they spend, and then they pay taxes. Whereas the employees who work for the corporations earn, then they pay taxes, and then they're allowed to spend. It's expensive not to know the law. Lesson 5. The rich invent money. Why take risks? Why should I bother developing my financial IQ? Why should I become financially illiterate? I answer, just have more options. Because it's the most exciting time to be alive. I'd rather be welcoming change than dreading change. I'd rather be excited about making millions rather than worried about not getting a raise. Intelligent people are those who work with or hire a person who is more intelligent than they are. When you need advice, make sure you choose your advisor wisely. Lesson 6. Work to learn, don't work for money. School rewards people who study more and more about less and less. You want to know a little about a lot. Choose teachers who have actually done what you want to do. Unless a person is used to changing, it's hard to change. The main management skills needed for success are management of cash flow, management of systems, and management of people. The better you are at communicating, negotiating, and handling your fear of rejection, the easier life is. Work to learn. Don't work for money. Lesson 7. Overcoming obstacles. The primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance. It's not having fear that's the problem, it's how you handle fear. It's how you handle losing. It's how you handle failure that makes a difference in one's life. People are so afraid of losing that they lose. Winning means being unafraid to lose. For most people, the reason they don't win financially is because the pain of losing money is far greater than the joy of being rich. Failure defeats losers and inspires winners. Doubt is expensive. Cynics criticize and winners analyze. Lesson 8. Getting started. This one's divided into 10 sub-chapters. 1. Find a reason greater than reality. The power of spirit. 2. Make daily choices, the power of choice. 3. Choose friends carefully, the power of association. 4. Master a formula and then learn a new one, the power of learning quickly. You become what you study, the same way that you are what you eat, you become what you study. In today's fast-changing world, it's not so much what you know that counts, because what you know is often old. It's how fast you learn. That skill is priceless. 5. Pay yourself first, the power of self-discipline. People who lack internal fortitude often become victims to those who have self-discipline. The 3 most important management skills necessary to start your own business are management of cash flow, people, and personal time. 6. Pay your brokers well. The power of good advice. The real skill is to manage and reward the people who are smarter than you in some technical area. 7. Be an Indian giver. The power of getting something for nothing. 8. Use assets to buy luxuries. The power of focus. The easy road often becomes hard, and the hard road often becomes easy. 9. Choose heroes. The power of myth. And 10. Teach and you shall receive. The power of giving. It is true that the world is only a mirror of you. Lesson 9. Still want more? Here are some to-dos. 1. Look for new ideas. 2. Find someone who has done what you want to do. 3. Take classes, read and attend seminars. 4. Make lots of offers. 5. Look for people who want to buy first and then look for someone who wants to sell. And 6. Action always beats inaction. And the final thoughts in the book. The key to becoming wealthy is the ability to convert earned income into passive income or portfolio income as quickly as possible. The path is the goal. Traditional schools were primarily about developing students' mentality. That is why so many students who do well in school do not do well in life, especially in the world of money. Thomas Edison did not fail 1,014 times. He successfully found out what didn't work 1,014 times before he invented the light bulb. Alright, so yeah, that's most of the things that I wanted to say from these books. Hopefully you found it interesting. These books have really helped inform my decisions when it comes to finances and help me understand how the world of finances is working. It's much better to be at least a little bit financially literate than to not be financially literate at all.